The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Triversity Talk. It's Wednesday night, the eve of Hump Day. And you like that, Evan Laurence? Everyone knows Evan Laurence. He's been on the show before. He's a wonderful co-host. How are you tonight, Evan?
I'm doing well here in my little home, playing with my new kitten and my older cat, and that's what's occupying my time.
I love it. Evan is so not telling the truth. He has a million projects, and I find it hard to believe that you're sitting there playing with your pussycats all day.
No, I'm doing all kinds of things. I'm practicing trumpet. I'm rehearsing my new script for the fall for the production I'm going to be in at Theater for the New City,
which I'm excited about.
And then I'm going to be performing on Sunday at Ianta Gallery in Jersey City. I'll be for 45 minutes. I'll be up there singing a bunch of my songs.
So. Oh, and I guess you'll be doing a lot of your parodies. Evan writes really fun parodies and does characters, right?
Yeah, like Gross Hands. Which is a parody of Roxanne. So
I love it all. Thank you so much, Evan, for coordinating your shirt with my background tonight. And ladies and gentlemen, we did that without even talking to each other, but we have like this big psychic connection. So on my own date book, October 14th, for those of you watching, if you're in New York City, I will be performing in Icovelli's 50 Shades of Gay, along with Tim Moss and Jacqueline Dubois at the Copa Cabana, which is
Jacqueline Dupree.
She's going to kill me because I never get it right. But I make it sound French. Don't I get any points for making it sound French?
Of course, we will.
Right, there you go. But that'll be October 8th and 14th, and you can find more information about that on my website, my Facebook page, and Icovelli's Facebook page, and Tim Moss's Facebook page. So we're all really excited about 50 Shades of Gay. So tonight's guest, I met before, a couple of years ago, as a matter of fact, but some people go through major transitions, shall we say, in their lives. And as they go through those transitions, they discover dreams and things that they always wanted to do, but never did for one reason or another. Well, this guest realized his dream. Patrick McNaughton is a queer artist and entrepreneur, and he is founder of the queer erotic website, dandyqueerart.com. So let's have a round of applause for Patrick. Thank you for being here with us tonight.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Oh my God, this is so great. So when did you decide to put up this group, dandyqueerart.com, or website? What was the thought process behind it?
Well, the thought process was I have been an artist for a very long time. I was married for a while and just having a very difficult time of life because I was an alcoholic, and I didn't really ever have the energy to produce anything that I really wanted to do. I had a lot of goals and a lot of aspirations, but nothing ever really manifested. And then it was one of those things that I told myself, like, if I ever quit drinking, or like if I didn't have this, terrible drinking problem, or if I ever had the opportunity really to get out of this, like all these wonderful things I could do, this being one of the major projects that I had been thinking of. And in a very hard way, that ended up coming true. I ended up quitting drinking eventually. And this was kind of my pet project in my recovery. And it has done very well so far and been very popular. So I'm excited about it. It really comes out of that there's a place that in the sort of studio system that queer people have traditionally held, and a lot of it is exploiting trauma or exploitation of it's selling this idea of what queer strife is, what queer life is about, but it's very desexualized, and also it just makes for a difficult time for people who are queer artists who are making anything involving male nudity specifically an opportunity to show their work, because that's very frowned upon. The non-queer art world is very much from a male gaze, because that's who buys the work. So
very interesting.
Yeah.
So it's male nudity really doesn't have a place in galleries from a sale perspective. So a lot of the artists I work with actually are not, exclusively erotic work. Some of them are erotic artists in complete private. They have like alternate identities. And some of them, just can't sell their erotic work, but it's something that they're passionate about, that they like to make. I think, art, there's a connection that happens between a viewer and the artist through this piece. And art speaks to people in a very, in a nonverbal way that is very much, I guess the desire is to get a reaction of some sort.
Yeah, it is, right. It is almost like a silent thought that speaks to you, and it is in ways dependent on the reaction of the person. But I want to go back a little, because you just said, first of all, a mouthful that many people don't know, myself included. My husband's an artist. I've been in the art world. I have a lot of gay friends that are artists. But what you're talking about is a whole other thing. It's how not only the male body is perceived, but male, how shall I put it, sexual practices on canvas, how that's perceived.
Well, yeah, and sexual practices on canvas are either presented as a shock value thing, and that's taken very seriously in the art world. So things like extreme fetish play, things like piss play, or like leather and domination, bondage, circumstances like that are fascinating and therefore are engaged with art. But there is sort of the beauty of two men, for instance, having a sexual connection is often lost, because that it goes into I think what's a more uncomfortable territory for the male gaze, which isn't looking at it as like a curiosity. It sort of confronts people about like that gay sex might not be this thing that a lot of people think it is, which is just this kind of animalistic or perverted, or not saying that that's not part of it, but that there's a realm in there of artists who want to show the world the beauty in this case specifically gay sex, but in queer sex of any kind, and that I think there is not really a market for that unless, and that's kind of what I was talking about exploitation. Is that there is a comfortable way that society, or heteronormative culture, is accustomed to dealing with homosexuals as a curiosity, or and not really as sort of dehumanizing homosexuality a little bit.
What I call digestible categories.
Right. Yeah. And so I'm trying to sort of push the conversation, I think, through the website and through all the other projects that I'm doing, of, you know, sex positivity, first of all, but also in just people breaking away from these, like, you know, American heteronormative traditions that are really based in Christianity, in Puritan sort of beliefs about sex being sort of an evil thing. You know, and this has been forever, this, you know, through generations, that we've known kind of that sex is taboo into an extreme measure, especially in relationship to things like violence and things that we're very comfortable showing children and talking about with children. But it's something that we haven't quite mastered, how to just have the conversations and how to make sex a little bit more accessible, just by the nature of that it's something that every single one of us does, and it's something that is like a common unifier, and something that I think is, if we can tap into the ability to have the conversations about that and to appreciate sex and sexuality for what it really is, which is not, you know, something to be ashamed of, I think we, you know, can tap into sort of our culture being a little bit more on the same page in a lot of other areas, philosophically, politically, and develop a bit more understanding. But I think there's a lot of powers that be, you know, that that are happy with the way that things are, and that sort of sexual revolution talk, and especially, you know, and we can get into this, but especially with like coming out of the AIDS pandemic and everything that's happened with that, there's a lot of confusion about where to move forward from here. And you know, there, even with it, among the queer community, there's, you know, people who are no kink at pride kind of people, and there are people who are, you know, shove it in their face, this is who we are kind of people. And I think I'm trying to occupy a space that's a little bit between that, of having the conversation, seeing it from multiple sides. In my philosophical pursuits, obviously there is a degree to which I also want to make play of it. You know, I think that there's a lot of joy that can be had in connecting to people through sex in a play way, which is kind of where kink comes in, because I think that kink kind of gets a bad rap of being this very dark, very nasty, dirty thing, which it can be, and it's really fun when it is. But it also is about connection and communication, and about pleasure, and about making connection in a way that is deeper than kind of what we're used to, which is all very superficial, all very, you know, internet based. It's all very difficult to kind of.
Do you consider what you're doing to be the very beginning and ahead of its time in terms of what was acceptable before, even within the gay community? I've looked at your site since you did it, not because I'm a voyeur, not because I wanted to get off on it. I had no, but it was because
there's not a ton actually to get off on the website, really. Like I would never go to the website and be like, this is an amazing.
There are people I could show that to, and they would be, and some of them would be gay men, by the way. Right. Yeah. So looking at what you're doing, and I actually showed the pieces that you sent to my husband, who happens to be a painter, and has painted male figure as well as female. And for his perspective, everything looked really normal to him that I was showing him, which I was not. This is my prejudice. I wasn't expecting him to react that way, you know.
Right.
And he did, which tells me that you are onto something with this site, that you are cutting edge, and you're going into a territory and finding work that's not objectifying, the people in it. it's showing, and it is showing all the things you said, the beauty, it could be the dirt, it could be the kink, it could be the love, it could be any of those things. But what, to me, what you're doing and what your site is doing is making it all acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and maybe not, and there's a whole complication with like, well, as soon as it's acceptable, are we then, not marginalizing it? And then where is the cultural kind of back, because
cultural component
a little bit, there is an element of kink that is very like, this is taboo and that's why it's attractive. So if it's not taboo anymore, then where does that leave kinksters? But we're very far away from that. From society accepting all of this, and I don't ever expect that like it's an acceptable thing. There are definitely legitimate reasons. There are risks with kink. There are across the board, whether it be physical injury, disease, but there are definitely kinks you can participate in that are not risky, but also kink is about like what you're really into. So for a lot of people, the pleasure outweighs the risk factor.
Right.
And to a certain extent, like I've experienced that in sort of my exploration of kink over the last 6 months or so, since I started filming this documentary. And so I don't know where that line of thought was going, actually.
No, we're right on the train with you. We were talking about the acceptability or non-acceptability of kink, but you said for two people that are into that, it is worth whatever risks they're going to take. Yeah.
And as far as acceptability goes, I think, to a certain extent, everybody has sexual interests that are outside the norm. It's a natural, or to me it is anyway, a natural part of development is like discovering your sexuality for yourself. And it's a very unique and personal experience for every single person. And there is a prescriptive way to look at and think about how to have sex. And there are people who do that and participate in that. And, they don't know much else beyond that. And there's this idea that if we don't show those people that, then they won't, pardon me, they won't ever realize that there's something missing from their life. But I think, in having spoken to a lot of people who've kind of made this self-discovery about like, it's okay to be who I am and it's okay to be into what I'm into, you see that sort of repression is is pretty toxic and can be very it can be a bit of a downward spiral for people, because especially if you're not really sure what it is that makes you so evil in the eyes of some people, or that your thoughts are wrong and that if you just don't have them, then that's enough. But the problem is like, you can't really control your thoughts. It's, to me, the sort of progress in that comes out of communicating your thoughts and kind of developing an understanding about where they come from. So, I think there's a lot of exploring that a lot of people want to do that maybe haven't been ready for it, because there isn't really a way to have a conversation about it. And there are a lot of older people, I'm sort of approaching my 40s now, and I'm finding that there are people, especially in queer culture around this age, who are much more open sexually, much more like, okay, having conversations about it. But I think, when I was growing up, and I think it's the same for a lot of people now, there are a lot of questions and not a lot of people to ask about them. And when you don't know, it really opens you up to people to take advantage of that. And I think, we have to, as a community, be a little bit more proactive in answering those questions before the wrong people intervene and are misguiding. Because I've seen that happen many, many times, not even just about sex, but about like things like drugs and alcohol, where there is this impression that this is how the gay community is by people who don't necessarily participate in it. So when you come into it and somebody approaches you about, sex in a certain way, or drugs or alcohol, there's a kind of an expectation of like, oh, okay, this is fine. But there are, when you look at kink culture, for instance, people have conversations, and there are certain I guess etiquette is the word. There's really a certain way that people communicate with each other. But then you also, in the documentary, and I should probably talk about that because I keep referencing it.
Oh yeah, because I have a lot of questions about the people in your documentary. I'm assuming you have people that you've interviewed talking, which was going to bring me to my question. Don't you find within the community that there's a big variation between people in their 20s and the way they view queer as opposed to people over, I'm going to even go past 40, over 50, and what their experience is?
Yeah, well, it's vastly different. It's also, I think, has a lot to do with, when I was sort of going through high school, we'll just talk about high school.
Yeah, let's.
As sort of a marker. When I was going through high school, it wasn't okay to be out. Being gay was sort of in the main, like it was sort of when Ellen came out, and it was like starting to become a little bit more
acceptable.
I wasn't out in high school. I didn't know anybody who was out in high school, and there was a surprising number of homosexuals that came out of like specifically my year in high school.
I had no idea.
And there was a lot going on in my head, as far as my sexuality is concerned. So I'm sure it was the same for everybody. But I think that that's dissipated a bit now because there are resources for young people with questions, young people who are, confused or legitimately confused because, society's telling them one thing, or their, religion or parents or whoever, that. And
but you know what? There's a lot more information.
These people mean well, but they don't understand. And
Right.
That's why I think it's very important to maintain this conversation of queerness being a separate thing. It always has been and will continue to be a separate thing, no matter how much you put it in the mainstream. There is a beautiful culture there, and there's a beautiful history there, which, intergenerationally also needs to be respected, of that.
Absolutely.
We wouldn't have what we have right now without everything that's come before us.
Absolutely.
Which is, another reason why like the no kink and pride thing is a really rough spot for me, because I understand, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people, my personal opinion is that there are a lot of people now that being gay is becoming more acceptable. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of people who want to be accepted because they actually can be now, into the sort of heteronormative lifestyle and heteronormative way of like of kind of developing your life, and repressing sexuality and sex, positivity is one of those things. And I think there's
that's interesting, Patrick, that you said that, because you're talking about, and I've said this too, for me, it started with marriage equality, which I thought was terrific. Except I saw a lot of my really fun gay friends turn into freaking Ozzy and Harriet and just want a house with a white picket fence. And I don't want to put that down. Okay. But it's a different thing than what you're talking about, because what you're talking about is really discovering the pleasure of male sexuality within the homosexual community and celebrating it and all the differences and all the diversity.
So. But I think also, historically speaking, yes, if you are shunned by your community because of your sexuality, you go somewhere and you create your own community, which right. is what happened essentially. And what continues to happen is, people move to the city, and there's a community here of gays that is very different from the community of gays, which is
upstate,
is very small. Well, not even upstate, because there are a lot of gays from the city up there, but like people who grow up in, say, Fresno, where I'm from, where everybody right. moves kind of to a gayer place. So there's a very specific population of gays that that live there, of queers. But I don't know. It's just what it comes down to is that it's entirely different. I am sort of in the mindset of I'm skeptical about being accepted, having queer culture accepted by the mainstream, because there is this, there's a beautiful thing in that homosexuality was marginalized for so long, and there was a lovely culture that was created out of it that was, decimated in good part by the AIDS epidemic or pandemic or whatever however you define it. That is kind of growing back now, and I think it's important as we kind of move forward as homosexuals who are free to have, unprotected sex now because of medical advances, and not be afraid of sex, which is kind of the overarching theme of the whole documentary is my journey through from being a kid and being raised to believe that like gay equals AIDS equals death, which a lot of people of my generation believe
for obvious reasons, right? Because I went through that, and that was the God's honest truth. It was terrifying.
Yeah, and I was a child during all of that. So to me, it was, if you are gay, here's what's going to happen. Like, you're going to have a quilt. Your family's going to cry.
Right.
You're just going to die, and it's going to be in a terrible way. And like, try your hardest not to do that. So I've always just been like afraid of sex. Like, sex brings out a fear in me, or it used to, that I didn't even realize really was there until it was gone.
And I didn't even realize, because we're over a 20-year age difference. I didn't even realize that people your age were feeling that way. So thank you for enlightening me, because I went through the whole AIDS epidemic and it left such a scar, but I didn't think about a lot of the time the people that came after, right? And what you're telling me.
I think it seems like that's slowly moving away, which also has its negative things. Like, there are people who are having sex without, people who are young, who are, 17, 18.
They have PrEP. That's what they tell me.
But aren't even really that aware of PrEP, because they're not so aware of HIV and how terrible it is. But condoms are no longer a conventional thing, and so there's a weird thing that I've heard murmurings of, because that's how these things get around, about younger people contracting a lot of STDs because they're not informed about, like, here are the horrible things that have happened and might happen to you if you are not careful, or if you're not taking PrEP,
Right.
But fortunately we have PrEP, and that's,
game changer.
The documentary in a weird way is a little bit of an ode to PrEP, because it's like, when PrEP came out, I was in sort of monogamous relationship situation when it was like a mainstream thing, and was like, okay, this is a safe thing to take, and it's extremely effective. So I was, in a relationship and then married during all of that. So the last time I had sex before I was married, I was afraid of contracting HIV. So then to kind of come out of divorce and be like, okay, here we're, starting over as a much older man. That also makes it a little bit more comfortable socially to like explore kink. I feel like people are okay with older people exploring it, but I
was going to say, do you think you have to be older to explore kink?
I don't think you should have to be. I think I have a lot of respect for younger people who explore kink. I think that there is a little bit of a perspective of that people who explore kink at a younger age, that there's something that they're damaged in some way, or that they are, that there's some kind of trauma that they're working through. And I must say that before I started this documentary, I agreed with that. Like, I went into this documentary thinking, okay, I'm going to find out like kink is trauma-based, and I'm going to hear these stories about like people's, and obviously some people are in denial about their trauma, and that's okay. But there are people who just generally enjoy this as a play experience, or, it's like, well, I was 5 and I rubbed up against this thing and it felt really good, and I've just always had this like relationship with this thing, So you find that the diversity of the kink community is such that when presented the way that I'm trying to present it, you realize like this is everybody. You know, these people are just communicating and practicing the things that we all kind of think about, or that we all have a little like, oh, well, I really like it when like, you know, a guy wears a sports jersey while we're having sex, because it like puts me in a, you know, special mood.
Sporty mood.
Yeah, I mean,
makes me feel sporty. Patrick, I want to get back to the documentary because it's completely fascinating to me. But I want to show the wonderful art that you.
Oh yeah. Let's
yeah. So Juan, can you please show the artwork now? Thank you.
That piece of art is me.
It's a beautiful portrait of you, Patrick.
It is, yes, and that's Kelly Greider is the photographer who does that.
Yay.
He uses this like old ass camera that's huge in his studio, and it's literally just me standing by a window making duck face. As you can tell, I'm a little bit like. Trying to look serious and intense.
An old feeling to it, very cerebral, contemplating.
Yeah, it's weird to sit here and look at a picture of myself and to talk about it.
All right, well, we can move on.
Let's to the next one.
Okay.
This, and I think probably the next couple images are the sort of, I mean, I can't show, I didn't want to censor anything on here, and I can't really show the gentleman's genitalia.
There'll be no genitalia showing here tonight.
Sorry, everybody who tuned in for the show, but
for the genitalia.
Yeah. But this is just an example of, I do some photography for the website. So people are always asking like, oh, is this your work? And it's not my work on the website. It's me curating people who I think are just like infinitely more talented than I am. And I do, you know, this is mostly for site traffic because people like to look at pictures of naked men, especially other homosexual men. I like taking pictures of beautiful men. So yeah, just this is an example. We can move on to the next one. Okay. There's another example. That one's a little bit more suggestive. Yeah, so I just do a lot of color. Like I play with color a lot with my photography. So this is a little bit more greens and purples. The other one was obviously red and blue. Some of it's with lighting.
You know what I liked about these were the colors, because I mean, how much stuff can you look at, right? Where you need to find something that's a little different.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing, and it's just kind of a take on an old, you know, let's take pictures of naked men thing. But I'm trying to take it in a direction. Color has always been something I'm a little bit obsessive about. So I enjoy these as small exercises for myself, just in playing with color and how it like changes the tone and the dynamic of the relationship to the viewer, and creates a mood. And also, you know, beautiful model, great ass.
Right. No, but that's a beautiful male form, and that's what we have to talk about here by creating this kind of art and by featuring it. It's a very positive feeling.
Yeah, and I want to feel positive about it, and that's the other thing too, is like I try not to take all of this too seriously, because I think the subject matter is very serious, and we can talk about it in a very serious way. But also sometimes it's not about all that seriousness. Like sometimes it's just about having a good time, or sometimes it's just about like, this image makes me feel horny. Like that to me is acceptable art. You know, there is a degree to which it becomes pornography, but you know, for me, being aroused is you can have that relationship with a piece of art. And I think that there is a little bit of discomfort that people have when they are aroused by a piece of art, and when they have that relationship to it, that is what prevents people from kind of engaging and having conversations about the art with other people.
Because do you think they're embarrassed by what they're feeling?
Yeah, I think we've a little bit been culturally taught that, you know, if you're looking at this thing and you're feeling positively about it, or it gives you a positive, you know, something that feels pleasurable, then there is something wrong with you, or that you should stop looking at that thing. And I disagree. I don't think stop looking at that thing is the answer.
Yeah.
I think, you know, keep looking at that thing, have a conversation about that thing, like talk about the emotions you're feeling, talk about where things come from, tell a story about your childhood it reminds you of. Like, I think that art functions as that kind of conversation piece for people as well. And I think that erotic art does that in a very fascinating way that connects people, especially gay men who are, you know, generally a little bit more open about discussing with other gay men the intricacies of their sex and sexuality. And so, you know, I think it's a little piece of gay culture that I want to keep alive and do my part. And I don't think, you know, some of the stuff is a little bit innovative, but I'm not the first person doing it. And I don't necessarily think that like I'm a leader in this conversation. I just think it's important for a lot of people to be having the conversation and pushing it at once in order for it to become an actual movement, if that makes sense.
I want to see the next couple of ones too.
Yeah, let's move through. Okay, so this is just an example of like stuff on the site. This was submission for I'm doing this November, actually. Last September, I did a Queer Art Open. So I just like whoever wanted to join could join. This year I'm going to do it with an erotic, like, because the site's getting a little bit more into the erotic as a niche market, which originally kind of started out as all queer art, but then I realized kind of the absence of a space for erotic art specifically, queer erotic, and especially, you know, masculine homoerotic art. That there isn't really a space for that, and that's kind of where the demand lies, especially with, you know, internet traffic and that sort of thing. So I'm pushing more in the erotic direction, but this is cross stitch, I guess you call it. So just a kind of unique thing that doesn't have a penis in it, so it made the cut. But yeah, we can move on to the next piece.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is an example of this is a digital piece. I wish I had my artist list here. That's the other thing too, is I'm kind of bad at this job because I'm terrible with names, and I deal with, you know, dozens of people every day.
To be art all the time.
Yeah, so this is actually a digital piece, entirely digital, that's made to look like a painting, and it's one of the winners of our kind of technique category from the Queer Art Open. A lot of this stuff, I'm just kind of showing off the talent of the people, because I think that, you know, my father actually, who kind of, you know, is very supportive and of everything I'm doing, but in a distant way, because he's obviously, you know, not into it. But he has
just
like
doesn't want it on the walls of his house.
Well, I mean, I had a bunch of, because I started this at his place, because I lived with him like post-divorce, and while I was recovering for the first 14 months, I, you know, was going to AA online, or sorry, I'm not really supposed to talk about it. I was going to
I know some of the guidelines, but I was
going to a 12-step program every day for 6 months and blah blah blah. Anyway, I started this business at his house, and like sort of as it was developing, he kind of got an idea of what I was doing, because I was being kind of like, oh well, it's not something you'd be into. And then I did a big art sale, and I had all the prints came to the house, and he was looking through them. Like he just started looking through them, and he was just like, oh my God, these are amazing. Like these people are so talented. And the prints are really beautiful too, by the way. Everybody go to the shop on the website. Everything we get, I've found this amazing printer who just like the quality is insane.
Yeah, that is absolutely beautiful. And I do want you to type in at some point the website so everybody knows about it. And I'm going to give it to our producer as well, which is dandyqueerart.com.
It's DANDY queerart.com. It's on my shirt too. Yeah, so this is a little bit more, you know, of an example of kind of what I
That-ish.
most of what is on the site at the moment, actually, because I
Right.
just recently published a book called Kink, which we can talk about after we kind of get through this, because there's a few images at the end of this slideshow from the book.
Okay,
But,
and I want to keep moving through the images because I don't want to run out of time. Yeah, this is great.
Because these are just, I just wanted to show everybody, give everybody a little preview of just kind of what the website content looks like. Although, for those of you who are not expecting it, there is a lot of male genitalia on the website.
But we don't have it here tonight.
Yes, mostly soft though. But yeah, we can keep moving through these.
Okay.
This is just a funny little, somebody did Victorian Grinder is the title of this one.
Yeah, I love that. I read that Victorian Grinder. Evan, how funny is that?
That's great. That's great.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, so there's like some fun, witty stuff with some of the artists that I work with. Next.
Yep.
Yeah, and so this is a little bit more, you know, technique-wise, beautiful painter. He's really talented and also just flawless with like representation of kind of a homoerotic, in homoeroticism in like working class and sort of, you know, more, how can I put this? He covers a lot of working class people, and it's a lot about like there's a grittier homoeroticism to everything that he
there would be a grittier edge to it. I found the style very illustrative. It's kind of like if he were a homoerotic painter that was around the same time as Norman Rockwell. There's something very Norman Rockwell-ish.
Yeah, he's. I think the technique is similar. Yeah.
Right.
Let's move to the next one. And this is a drawing, a colored pencil drawing that is just like technically one of the more beautiful pieces I've.
It's beautiful. It looks like a paint. It looks like a photograph to me.
Yeah, and it's, you know, all colored pencil, which is
incredible.
Yeah, so the skill of these artists that I'm working with is just like, I feel so lucky because I mean, I'm lucky because this is sort of a marginalized community of people. So it's like the insanely talented people, while they do, you know, have work that's maybe not as homoerotic, that gets put in like galleries and that sort of thing, that like I get to work with these people and they're very excited to work with me because there's not really a lot going on in the world of erotic art for queer, you know.
But you know what, Patrick, I can't help but wonder that we're not just on the cusp of being able to have galleries that are known for homoerotic art.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like Leslie, right.
Well, interesting thing about Leslie Lohman is it comes up a lot as an example of like, here's queer art. But they actually, I think, policy-wise, don't really cover a lot of erotic art anymore.
They don't.
It started because the you know, Leslie and Lohman, who are two people, two men, they are not involved in the running of it anymore, and
There's
so
there's
been a bit of a shift. But yes, they have historically and hopefully continuous into the future promoted, you know, erotic art as fine art.
Well, they do with their life drawing sessions.
Yes. I'm not saying they don't promote it at all. I'm just saying they don't program it a lot. And I think that also has to do with that they're sort of in a weird liminal space between like being edgy and being like a you know, subversive gallery, and like trying to be more accepted into the mainstream to be a little bit more appreciated in the mainstream art world. But there are definitely galleries everywhere that are having shows, if not specifically devoted if the gallery itself isn't specifically devoted to queer erotic art, there are queer erotic art shows happening.
Yes.
And, you know, a lot of places. So wherever you are, there's probably something happening there soon, or, you know, whatever city you're close to. Let's move on to the next photo. So this is just technically
this is hilarious. I love this one. Evan, look at this. It's great.
John the Baptist take off on Salome.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, you know, there's just all of this like really witty art that occupies this queer space. That's just also beautiful and technically just something to behold. Like it's a gorgeous piece to look at. And at the same time is really thoughtful.
Right.
Next piece. So this is actually an artist who I am currently attempting to. He has designed a book that I'm going to be publishing as soon as I can afford it. And his work is just beautiful. His color work is stunning and flawless, and I think he might have another piece in this slideshow, but yeah, so this is just another example of you know, it's not quite kink, it's not quite, you know, not really heteronormative love situation, but it's, I don't know, there's hopefully you see the beauty that I see, or a different beauty.
A lot of sensitivity. I see beauty and sensitivity.
Yeah. Next photo. He's actually one of my favorite artists. A lot of these photos actually are not really my favorite pieces. They're just in this because they're
this is
very
a
good
cross section though to show.
Oh yeah. I think so too. They're just these artists. I want everybody to go to the site and like see what these artists can do when they're actually doing what they do best, which is usually has to do with complete male nudity or partial, you know. But Volkoviak is what he goes by. He actually did Christmas cards for me last year, which will be
love it.
Christmas this year.
Wow.
Yeah, but the cards were like, and I'll have them again this year, but it's like you know, Daddy Santa who has like big leather boots on, like leather Daddy Santa, and then there's like the elf is like a really big, like muscly sort of Twinkie looking guy, and then Mrs. Claus is a drag queen, and
I love it.
Rudolph is a pup with like reindeer antlers and a red nose. Yeah, so like he's great, and he really does this like post Tom of Finland kink leather work with very hyper masculinity, but in a very colorful way that is really sensitive to skin tones, which he does really
right.
I think
it's so funny you mentioned Tom of Finland, because when we started this whole conversation, Evan, I was going to ask you. I was going to say Tom of Finland, right? You, because I've seen a lot of that kind of work, and there you go.
So this is just an example of like a different style of work from a cross section of like what's going on kind of now in the queer sphere. Yeah, so he's a stained glass worker who does great stuff.
Love it.
Next photo.
Beautiful.
This is just a beautiful painting. I love this piece. I love this artist. I love his work.
This is a watercolor, Patrick, right?
I think it is. I don't know, actually. I think it's not. I think it might be.
Oh, the strokes, it looked like a watercolor to me.
Yeah, I think
acrylic, maybe.
Yeah, it might be acrylic. It might be temporary.
Patrick, all of these images we're seeing, they're for sale on your site?
No, that is not true.
Okay.
The stuff that is for sale on my site at any given time is the stuff that I have licensed to sell. That will be changing soon because I'll be better organized and have a little bit more. The problem is funding. So go to the website, buy whatever is there, or
buy what's for sale. Oh, this is
Yeah,
good.
but for now, I have a bunch of pieces that are from this book that I published.
Who did I lose there?
And then if you visit in November, there will be a big sale then of all of the people who have entered the Queer Erotic Art Open. And so there'll be, at any given time, it's good to check back in the site because we don't just add stuff, like stuff goes away because I no longer have, the licensing to sell it.
See, that's beautiful.
I love that.
Oh yeah, and so this is the guy with the armpit who I said I was producing his book. This is actually a piece that he did. So we have a collection, the Dandy collection, which is all 8x8 pieces, which is in service to something that is coming soon. That this whole collection was designed for, which is a new way to like store art. That keep paying attention to the site, and you'll find out what I'm talking about. But these are all 8" by 8" pieces. And his is one of the more popular ones. But as you can see, like he's really great with color as far as like it relates to sensuality, emotion. And that piece is actually always available on the website. There's a limited edition of 100. So once it sells out, obviously it won't be available anymore. But yeah, go buy it. Next piece. Okay, this is currently available on the website. This, everybody's like, oh, Tom of Finland. Interestingly enough, not at all. It's the same subject matter. It's, leathers and bikes. Tom of Finland never did really a lot of realism. His stuff is very stylized in a way that I very much appreciate. And I'm a big fan of Tom of Finland. But, as you work in this, you sort of start to see all the different nuances about how people work. This is Brad Welch, who is an artist. This is entirely done in black pencil.
That's amazing.
Wow.
That's amazing. Patrick, I think we're going to have to end on this.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Last but not least.
Right? This is another great one that it looks like a painting, or it looks like a photo, but it's a painting.
That's amazing that someone, I actually put my glasses onto this. It's unreal, really. Look at the talent that you've shown us tonight. So people can go to the dandyqueerart.com website, right?
Mm-hmm. So go to dandyqueerart.com, buy this book. There is a lot of stuff, the stuff that we were going to show that was at the end of the slideshow is the stuff that I could show.
Yeah, that was the cover. That was at the end of the slideshow, that the cover of the book.
So this, I won't, flip through it too much because we can't show you all of that, but I go buy that book. I'm very proud of it. So that's one thing. Go to the website always. It's going to be updated often with new stuff, and you'll always be able to tell there what's going on with all the things in my life. The documentary, follow Dandy Queer Art. It's at dandy.queerart on Instagram. It's brand new, so there's only like 3 pictures, so it looks kind of like a fake account.
But your Facebook site, tell them about the Facebook site too.
Yeah, there's a Facebook group as well called Dandy Queer Artists. If you look that up and join it, that's more of like a community amateur showcase. So it's a more just people throwing up their work that they do on a daily basis, or their sketches and that sort of thing, which I highly encourage everybody to do. So there's a Facebook group for that. And then the documentary. So if you want to keep up,
November 1st. Don't forget November 1st.
Oh, October 1st, which is
thank you. October 1st. Sorry.
Why, if I sound fried or manic, on October 1st, which is on Saturday from 2 to 8 p.m. in Hell's Kitchen, we are doing our first queer erotic art fair. So
okay, and I am Erotic Park Fair. I am at time. Everybody come October 1st to Hell's Kitchen. You can find out more on the site. I want to take a picture. I always do that. Patrick, thank you so much. You are a wealth of information. We love what you're doing. Keep on doing what you're doing. Keep on healing the way you're healing, because you know what? You're sharing that with the world.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm
going
to.
Thank you. And thank you, Evan. Everyone have a great night.